Hey everybody, how you guys doing today? Jim Prusek here from the Pain PT, and today I got evidence of the week for you guys. I love to bring you all some good research, some good evidence. There's so much out there. I could probably do one every day for a long time, but I try to do evidence of the week once a week to give you guys some of the data, some of the research that a lot of people out there in the world are doing around the body, somatic symptoms, and our brain and nervous system, the psychology, because that's the part of medicine that's missed here. We always think of somatic symptoms, physical symptoms as being caused by physical problems. And while that can be true, there's a large number of people having very real physical symptoms that are not caused by the body, but caused by the brain and nervous system. So let's jump into today's evidence of the week, everybody. And today's is a paper from 2016, or sorry, 2024. Sorry, 2024. And this paper is titled, Is It a Vicious Circle and for Whom? The Reciprocal Association Between Rumination and Somatic Symptoms and Moderation by Stress. Okay, so I'm going to take you through this study here today. This was done in China, Chinese college students. Okay, and we'll go through what they were trying to do here. Okay, so what we're looking at here is, again, somatic symptoms, which is something I talk about here, what we can call the somatization or somatic symptom disorder. I went over that in one of my other YouTube videos, and its relationship to psychological distress or psychological stress. Okay, it says here in this particular study, they looked at the COVID timeframe, the COVID pandemic, right, when there was a lot of stress from that, plus looking at the daily hassles. So daily hassles are how much just daily stress the person has in relationship to somatic symptoms and the tendency to ruminate. But as we start out here, when we talk about somatization, they said in Chinese societies, and we see this a lot in Asian cultures, that they said the somatization of negative emotions can avoid stigma surrounding mental illness in Chinese societies. So I thought that was interesting. Another day, I'll go over another condition in Korea called hwangbang. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's an actual illness. It's called fire illness. And these are people who actually repress anger, and end up getting a lot of these different physical symptoms in their body that they actually have a medical term for. Because in that culture, that Asian culture, the women especially have a tendency to hold in their anger, don't display it or show it. We'll talk about that another day. But what we're talking about here is about stressors and stress generally in these college students as they went through that COVID period of time, the pandemic time, which was very stressful on many levels. Um, and they looked at, again, a couple factors here. They looked at the stress from COVID. They looked at the daily hassles each day, how much they were feeling stressed about certain things. And I'll go through some of these tests they looked at. So they looked at, again, COVID-related stress. They measured that. Daily hassles was a 10-item scale that covered interpersonal annoyances, academic troubles, concerns for future development. Okay, so they had them rate that. Again, they looked at COVID-related stress that they were having. This could be something like worry about the future outbreak of the pandemic in China, life-related stressful experiences, such as social distancing, stress from that, limited social activities with friends. Okay, so they measured both those two stressors, daily hassles and COVID-related stress, and then they also measured the level of rumination through a certain type of questionnaire. Okay, and the scale had 4 items on it that were describing ruminative responses to negative mood. So, an example item might have been when I'm sad, I think about all my failures, faults, and mistakes. Okay, and plus there were other questions as well. And then they measured somatic symptoms. And they used a somatic symptom scale called the Index of Somatic Symptoms. And the scale presents the 6 most frequent symptoms. Again, obviously, you all know that you can have many more, but they were measuring 6 in particular: headaches, stomach aches, nausea, sore muscles, could be anywhere in the body that includes pain, being tired, and feeling weak. Okay. So they put all this together, right, in 582 participants. They had them keep a diary every day for 7 consecutive days to rate again the online. They did this, the ruminative responses, the level of somatic symptoms they had, the COVID related stress, and the daily hassles. Those four things. And they did that every night before bedtime for 7 consecutive days. And 582 participants, college students. Okay, and let's go down at what they found here because it's going to be helpful for us to understand this. And again, this was the first study to actually measure this. They said this present study is the first to examine the associations between rumination and somatic symptoms on a daily basis. I found a reciprocal association between these two variables, so between the level of rumination and the level of somatic symptoms throughout this 7 day period. They found that greater rumination predicted higher next day levels of somatic symptoms, and higher levels of somatic symptoms increase next day rumination. So again, here's this vicious circle that can start up for some of you. But here's what wasn't really important. It was only the group that had high COVID related stress and high daily hassles of stress. So when you combined more stress, basically, so they had the stress from the COVID was high and daily hassles for that person was high. When you had that group there, they call the high group of stress. Those are ones that show the relationship between rumination and somatic symptoms. The other groups didn't show it as much. So what it tells us here is that the level of stress we have around different things is going to impact potentially the level of rumination we have and the level of somatic symptoms. And that can set up this vicious cycle. Okay. So only the group that reported high levels of COVID-related stress and high daily hassles showed a significant association between rumination and somatic symptoms. Again, their findings yield a valuable insights into the bidirectional interplay between rumination and somatic symptoms and provide evidence of this by the experience of stress. Okay. And again, their results were consistent with previous longitudinal studies that have shown greater rumination predicts future somatic symptoms. What they did find, which was interesting here, is that they both go in both directions, right? That the rumination created more somatic symptoms, but then the somatic symptoms themselves created more rumination. And the actual somatic symptoms creating more rumination had a stronger effect, okay? Stronger results. But again, we can get caught in that vicious cycle there. Okay. And so what they say here is that that again, their findings indicate how the accumulation of stress could activate physiological responses. These are the somatic symptoms, and exert wear and tear on the body. All right. And that coping with high levels of both stressors, meaning dealing with this with the COVID and daily hassles each day. So coping with high levels of daily stressors takes a toll in terms of exhaustion, resource depletion, helplessness, negative reappraisal, thus exaggerating the vicious circle between rumination and somatic symptoms. Okay. And again, there needs to be a certain level of stress, but so you want to check in with yourself and see what's your stress levels like. Are you finding yourself ruminating about the somatic symptoms or and seeing some relationship there? Because the rumination that can start up from the stress and from the symptoms can keep this cycle going. Okay. They say here that when you reach a certain level of stress, it may reach the threshold and trigger the detrimental rumination somatic symptom circle. Okay. And says our findings underscore the importance of assessing and addressing stress levels in people who report somatic complaints, has practical implications for early detection for at-risk individuals, and also timely intervention to alleviate somatic symptoms associated with rumination. Okay, so what we need to do here is break out of this vicious circle that they say here. We need to reduce the stress, right? The takeaways here is that, yeah, we need to learn how to cope with stress better, right? Reduce stress, whatever it is in your life. If you're having high levels of stress, you want to take that down, want to deal with that stress better, cope with it in healthier ways, work with our emotions, reappraise situations, find solutions, let things go, take action, right? All the things we can do to try to reduce stress, change our perception of things. And then we also want to make sure we're not getting in rumination. Okay, we're having that negative thinking loop around the somatic symptoms because that can act as a fuel source, as I like to tell people. It acts as a secondary reaction, just like they saw there was a stronger relationship between somatic symptoms causing the more rumination, right? And then that's setting up more symptoms. So we got to step in somewhere. Now we can't stop the symptoms, right? We're not able just to turn those off, but we can work with the rumination. That's the psychological mediator we can work with. Okay. I think that's really important to understand here. And they mentioned rumination is defined as a style of repetitive negative thoughts and an inability to disengage from these thoughts. It appears to play a prominent role in the presence of somatic symptoms. Okay. So remember, everybody, a couple of things to take from the studies. One, we already know this that somatic symptoms, the ones they measured here, can be related to stress. We know stress, psychological, emotional stress can actually cause these somatic symptoms in the body, real physical symptoms caused by stress, not structure, nothing wrong in the body. Then subsequent rumination can set in around these symptoms, and that can start a vicious cycle, right? So we got to look at both things. Like I said, I always talk about primary stressors and secondary stressors. Primary stressors is these life stressors, things we're stressing about that could be contributing to and causing the symptoms in the first place. Secondary stressors is how much we stress about the symptoms themselves. Okay, we can get into rumination, catastrophizing, these type of things, and more anxiety and worry and concern. And now that's just going to set up the vicious cycle. So we want to work on both things, right? Both areas, if we can take stress down, life stressors, things that stress us out, how we cope with them, how we deal with them. And absolutely, we need to take down the secondary stress that we are potentially creating around the symptoms. Remember, these symptoms, if they're not structural, are created by a stressed brain, by emotions, by a brain, again, that's sensitized, anxious, depressed, right? We need to understand that that's okay. It's not dangerous. As Dr. Sarno said, it's harmless. It's uncomfortable. It's painful. Yes, it's distressing. Yes, it comes with emotions, right? Frustration and fear and despair and hopelessness sometimes. But we need to understand that if we play into that symptom and think it's really bad and something's wrong with us or it's dangerous or threatening or harmful, well, now we're setting up a perpetuation of it through that vicious cycle they talk about here between rumination and somatic symptoms. So I hope this makes sense, everybody. Love the tie in the research here. I think it's super helpful for you guys to understand that the data is out there. There's a lot of data between the mind and the body. If you need help, please reach out. That's what I do here full time now, group, individual sessions, treatment sessions. You can go to the Pain PT to learn more. Hope you guys enjoy these videos. If you do like it, please give it a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, so you'll get updates and alerts when new videos drop. And we'll see you guys next time. Take care.